Guys, welcome back. This is Jake with Jacoby and Company Woodworks, and today we're going to build this little money box, trinket box, watch box, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to put in it. It has a fixed bottom and a sliding lid top. It's meant to be kind of deceiving, so you don't really know how to get into it. However, this is the top on this one. Slides open. You can put your cash in there. Again, anything that you want to store, kind of hide a little bit. And the cool part is we're going to build this only using the table saw. That's it, just the table saw. So let's get into it. So guys, first thing we want to do is figure out how big of a piece of wood we need. You can make this out of anything. I have this beautiful piece of walnut. Again, you can go and get a piece of pine from the big box store, your local wood supplier, oak, anything. You can make it out of anything. I figured for my first YouTube video, I would use this piece of walnut, which has this beautiful flaming. I don't know if you can see that on camera if it's coming up, but there's this beautiful arced grain pattern and this flame pattern that comes in there like a sunburst. I've been holding this piece of wood for quite some time, and I figured for my first YouTube video, I'm going to use it. So what we need to figure out is length and width. U.S. currency is 6 1/8 by 2 5/8. So we have 6 1/8, 2 5/8. Now that needs to sit down inside of the box. So we got to take into account the thickness of the material the whole way around, because we're going to miter our corners. That way we can figure out our length and width. So approximately 6 1/8. We're going to want a little bit of wiggle room, so we'll call that like 6 1/4. And then the thickness of this material here is right about 11/16. So I'm going to just round on the heavy side. I'm going to say 8 inches for each side. So I got 8 and 8, 16. And then for the width, we want to see 2 5/8, 2 1/2, a little bit heavy. And then the width, obviously the material, thickness of the material again, because of the miters. I'm going to go heavy and go 4 1/2, 4 1/2. So when you take 2 sides of 8, 2 sides of 4 1/2, it gives me 25 inches long. So we're going to need approximately 25 inches of length on this board. And then I'm going to make my box about 2 1/2 inches high. I don't want to go too thick because it's not going to look proportionate. It's going to look bulky. So I'm going to go approximately 2 1/2 inches high. So we can go ahead and go to the table saw, because that's the only tool we're going to use. Yes, I have planers, I have joiners, I got chop saws, I got everything else, but a lot of people don't. And when I started out, all I had was a $99 Delta table saw that I used for 5, 6, 7 years before I upgraded to a larger Hitachi, and now I have my Powermatic. But a lot of people are starting out, younger guys or just hobbyists. They got a table saw, they don't got a lot of other tools, maybe some hand tools. So I'm going to show you a really cool project. Again, just a little box you can hide some money in. It has a secret sliding lid on it that's made 100% with the table saw. So we'll go ahead and dive into it. Go over to the table saw here. I'm going to rip that strip at 2 1/2 inches, and then make sure I got at least 25 inches in length, and then we'll get on to the next step. Okay guys, so what we got is our 2 1/2 inch piece of wood. We're going to go ahead and figure out where to put our slots for the lid that's going to slide and for our fixed bottom. I want to leave enough meat on top of the slot so it doesn't break without having too much, so it looks unproportionate. We don't need a lot of room in between because bills are really thin, so you can put $10,000 in this thing and $100 bills and still have room. So what I'm going to do is leave about 1/8 of an inch, and then I'm going to rip. We've got to know what our width of our lid's going to be. You can make out whatever you want. I'm going to make mine right about 1/2 an inch. So we go ahead and figure 1/2 an inch here. I have a pencil mark, and that's what we're going to rip. Now we're going to do this on the table saw, obviously, the only tool we're using. I'm going to set the table saw 1/8 inch from the blade on this side. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to run this through one time, flip it around, and run it through, because I'm going to make the top and the bottom exactly the same width. off of that edge. So it's going to expedite the process. So instead of cutting the 1/2-inch groove on the top and then resetting the fence to cut the bottom half, I'm literally just going to turn the piece of wood around, pass it through, move the fence, pass it through, move the fence, repeat until we have our 1/2-inch groove. So let's go ahead and set the table saw up for that. I'm only going to go about a 1/4 inch, maybe 5/16 deep. So let's go ahead and get the saw set up and get that done. Okay, let's go ahead and get our saw blade down to the right depth. We're just going to go ahead and eyeball this. It's really not that important. Just make sure you're right about a 1/4, 5/16, whatever's about halfway. That looks pretty good right there. Okay, next what we want to do is slide our fence in toward about 1/8 of an inch from that blade. That's about 1/8 right there. So we'll go ahead and get that locked in, and we'll go ahead with our first pass. Okay guys, you can see about 1/8 inch of wood there with our first pass. We're going to go ahead and step that over until we hit our mark. What I'm going to do first though, I ran that through this way. I'm going to flip the board around and I'm going to run the bottom pass while we have the fence set up so I don't have to do that again. So let's do that. Okay, so as you can see, now we have both passes. They're identical. And all I'm going to do now is shift that fence away from the blade about the width of a blade. That way I can go ahead, or a little less, so you don't leave wood in there. But we can clean that up with the chisel if we do. So let's go ahead and shift the blade over and make 2 more passes. Go ahead. We have about a 1/4 inch so far. Obviously we need to get the 1/2 inch. I'm going to go ahead and grab our lid material. That way we can check the fit as we get closer. Okay guys, so here's going to be the piece of wood. It's out of the same board that I'm using for the sides. Just look at that pattern. Isn't that amazing? Just beautiful piece of wood. This measures right at 9/16. We have a 1/4 inch so far. We're going to need about 3 more passes, so let's go ahead and get that finished up. go. So we have a nice tight fit there, so that's good for the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and make the top. I'm going to go ahead and run one more pass on it, just to remove a little bit. Because remember, we want that lid to slide through the top of the project. The bottom's getting glued, but the top's going to slide. So I'm going to take just a little bit more off that top, and then we can move on to the next step. I don't know if you guys can see that little lump of wood right there. It's a high spot. I must have not been pushing down on that wood when I ran it through. So I'm going to take a chisel and just clean that up. Not a bad idea to go ahead and just run a chisel down through both of the grooves just to clean them up a little bit. I'm going to go a little bit wider here. That one will fit. Yeah, that's good. Get some of them shavings out of there. That looks pretty good, guys. We got that all cleaned up. It's pretty flat. We can go ahead and move on to the next step, getting our sides cut. Okay, guys, so now that we have our grooves cut in our piece of wood, we're ready to go ahead and lay out the sides. So we want to figure out what the length of pieces are going to be. So again, a dollar bill or any U.S. currency, modern, is 6 1/8 by 2 5/8. Now I want a little bit of wiggle room, so I'm adding a 1/4 inch. So that takes it to 6 3/8 long by 3 inches wide. Now we need to take into account the thickness of our piece of wood for the sides. Like I said, we're going to miter these. So we've got to take that width times 2, because you're going to have 2 on the side and 2 on the ends. So 11/16 times 2 is 22/16, which breaks down to 1 6/16 or 1 3/8. So we need to take 6 3/8 plus 1 3/8, and that gives us 7 3/4. So that's going to be our 2 long sides, 7 3/4. And then we've got to take 3 inches, which is going to be the short side. We need to add 1 3/8 also. Again, that's 11/16 times 2. We have 2 sides. That's going to give us 3 plus 1 3/8 is 4 3/8. So that's going to be the shorter side. So we need 7 3/8 and 4 3/8. So we need 2 and 2. Now what I like to do, when I have one piece of wood that's long enough, I like to go ahead and do one short side, one long side, one short side, one long side. And what that'll do, if you cut it close enough, and I'll show you on the table saw here, that'll go ahead and line up your grain orientation when it goes around the corner of the box. So let's go ahead and go to the table saw here. I'll get this set up to 45-degree bevel, and we'll go ahead and start cutting our pieces. Okay guys, we got our first miter on the end cut, so we can go ahead and pull our 7 3/4 inch. I got that marked there. We'll go ahead and cut that on the table saw. Okay guys, so we have our first piece cut. I went ahead and ripped the miter for the second piece. Now we're going to go ahead and lay that out. We're going to make that 4 3/8 for a short piece. But what I wanted to show you is by doing what we're doing here this way, that grain lines up. So when it turns the corner, that grain's going to match the whole way around except one side, obviously, unless you had a piece of wood with very straight grain, that the one joint would line up from the both ends. But as you can see, for 3 of the 4 corners, that grain's going to line up pretty close. So kind of neat effect. Okay guys, so let's go ahead and measure this up. So we go from that edge to this edge, and it looks like almost exactly 7 inches, and it doesn't have to be super tight. you got a little bit of fudge factor there. So we're going to go 7 inches long, and the width looking like 3 5/8. Let's just go 3 9/16 on this one. So 3 9/16 by 7 inches. Let's go ahead and get that cut. We have our box ready to go. The bottom's here. Nothing's glued. This is just I'm holding it together. We have our top made, and what our top's going to do, it's going to slide in this slot. That's how this box is going to open, and we're going to make it kind of secretive. I'll show you what I mean here in a minute. In order to do that, what we need to do is take an end off, and we need to cut right at the bottom of this slot. So our blade's going to go below that. We don't want to cut into the slot. We want to cut below it. So that's going to be where our blade rides, right there. So let's take that on the table saw. This is a little small piece, so be careful. Use your push stick. We're going to completely cut this off. Okay, you can see what I meant. I've got a little whisker here. We'll just snap that off. But that's going to basically be the handle for our lid. That's how that's going to go. We're going to go ahead and glue that on right now. You can see that bottom is real close to being smooth to that. That's what we're looking for. Let's go ahead and glue that together, let it set, and then we'll come back for the next step. Okay guys, you can see I got that glued on there. I just used some CA glue. Obviously you can use some wood glue. I gotta clean it up, but I wanted to keep the video going here. So got that glued on. We're ready for the next step. You can see the remainder of that piece that we cut off. It's going to go right on, just like we normally would. Now you are gonna have a little bit of a gap there. As you can see, right underneath that slot, there's a little bit of a gap. That's okay. We're gonna hide that. Take your lid, slide that in there. Okay, you can see that gap I'm talking about. And what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and glue the whole box together next. And then once the box is glued together, we're going to cut a slot the whole way around, 2 slots to mimic, and that's going to kind of make that disappear even though it's still there. I'll show you what I mean. But let's get this box glued together, then we can move on to cutting that slot. Okay guys, so we have our grain orientation all lined up, seamless through there. What I'm going to do is just use the old painter's tape. That'll just kind of help us clamp it together while we're gluing. Obviously we can move it around still with painter's tape on there, and we can go ahead and put, I have a band clamp that'll go around that as well. So let's go ahead and get that on. Okay, we'll just go ahead and flip it over now. Try not to knock the pieces off. Make sure there's no debris down inside of there. I'm using some Titebond 3. It's primarily what I use a lot. So we'll just go ahead and get that all smeared in here. Don't worry about excess, guys. We can clean that up later. Put some in the bottom groove for the bottom piece. Put that in there. What you can do is kind of close it up. That'll smear that glue around a little bit. Okay, let's go ahead and drop that bottom in. We can close this up now. Okay, get that semi-squared up. Put a piece of tape on there. So let's go ahead and just get that tightened up on there. Get some pressure on it and let that dry. It actually looks pretty good. Okay guys, we're back. I let that set up in the clamps for about 2 hours. Went and grabbed some lunch with my son. Went ahead and pulled it out of the clamps, gave it a light sanding with some 120 and 180 grit. Just to clean up the miters, get the little bit of glue off. So here's the box, there's the lid. Slides down in, closes pretty good. We can adjust that a little bit. The box, so from top to bottom, looks pretty much the same from the outside. The only thing that looks different is that notch right here, the slot. And that's from our blade when we cut that piece off to glue onto the lid. So what we're going to do, we're going to go over to the table saw, and I'm going to continue this slot the whole way around the box. Okay, so we're just going to set the blade to that depth, cut that slot the whole way around, flip the box over, kind of like when we cut our slots earlier, and do one on the other side. That way it matches. So let's go ahead and go over to the table saw. We'll set that up, cut it, and I'll show you. That kind of makes this disappear, and then you don't realize what top and bottom is then. So you'll see that here in a minute. We're gonna just want to make this notch maybe 1/8 of an inch high. So let's just slide our box in. We're about 1/4 inch there. Again, we don't need to measure, guys. We can eyeball this. It's fine. If you want to measure, that's great. Go ahead. Do this by eye here. We're about 1/8 inch there. I'm just going to slide the fence in just till it touches. Make sure the piece can move without moving the blade. So you want to be very careful, guys. Make sure this is tight against the fence when we do this, and just take it all the way around. Make sure your fingers are out of the way. You can see our notch the whole way around. Now let's go ahead and flip the box this way and run another one the whole way. Okay guys, you can see we have that the whole way around now. Let's go ahead and put the lid in. So with that notch in there, now it's hard, it kind of makes that lid disappear. If you can see that. Obviously the lid's right there. But it kind of makes that notch disappear on that. So let's take that over, let's do a little bit more sanding, get it all cleaned up. All right, we got everything sanded up to 180. I didn't want to bore you with that process. I'm gonna go ahead and put some Osmo. This is Osmo Extra Thin Clear. You can use polyurethane, you can use spray finish, hand rubbed, it doesn't really matter, guys. I'm gonna put a coat of this on, which is probably gonna raise the grain. We'll go ahead and sand it back, put one more coat on, and then call it done. I love putting finish on walnut, on any wood really, especially walnut that has figure. You see that grain just pop out at you. I can't wait to put some finish on this sides of this box where all that grain is. Side of the box first. Okay, we'll let that set, come back, sand it back down, put one more coat on, and we'll check back in. Okay guys, here we are. This is after the second coat. The first coat I put on, sanded it back to 220 grit, and then went ahead and put a second coat on. This is dry now. We put some money inside her just to show you it does fit, fits very well. And something else that's cool about this design, you don't even have to open the box to put your money in if you don't want to. On the side where the lid is, and that little slot right there, is plenty of room to get your money, and you can just shoot it inside there. So you don't even have to open the lid up in order to put it in. Sometimes people ask me, hey, the lid, if you tilt it up, it rocks out. Yeah, it does. Something you can do is put a little piece of putty up inside that groove, and that'll grab that lid. I've done that before, it works great, lasts a long time. But look at the grain on this too. It's just beautiful grain. Beautiful piece of wood. I love walnut. But guys, if you like this, please like, subscribe, comment below. I try to answer every comment that I can, and check back for new videos. I got a bunch of projects coming up, building some dressing benches, some tables, different stuff like that. So I'm excited to share my work with you guys. So thank you. Be kind to one another. I'll see you soon.